Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. Think about the last time you promised yourself you were finally going to get organized.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. You probably, I don't know, downloaded the perfect new app, maybe color-coded your entire calendar, set up like a dozen folders,
But then that Thursday, you were right back to complete chaos.
Exactly. Frantically writing to-do lists on the back of old receipts. I mean, why does that happen to almost all of us? It's because we constantly treat productivity like this one-size-fits-all medical prescription.
Yeah, which just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. We assume that if a system works perfectly for some tech CEO on YouTube, we just need, more discipline to make it work for us. But the reality is far murkier. So our mission for this deep dive is to stop you from forcing yourself into generic time management molds.
Absolutely.
We are unpacking a genuinely brilliant article by Felix Römer from smartkeys.org, and it's titled, Find Your Productivity Style. Choose the techniques that work best for you. So consider this your buyer's guide to finding personalized methods that actually match the reality of your day.
And, the urgency behind this shift really cannot be overstated. We are operating in this era of hybrid and remote work, where the environment, the tools, and the very nature of collaboration have basically fundamentally fractured.
It's totally different now.
It really is. And the data paints a pretty stark picture here. Like, Dialpad recently pointed out that generic, poorly structured meetings are just wasting massive amounts of time across the corporate landscape.
Oh, yeah. Hours and hours.
Right. And Luxifor notes this crucial underlying truth, which is that there is literally no single best approach to getting things done. Productivity is highly localized.
Which makes sense when you think about it.
Exactly. It all comes down to fitting your specific appetite for routine, your natural cognitive energy levels, and, your capacity for collaboration.
We really need to look inward because modern professional life is just way too demanding to rely on hacks that clash with our nature. I always think about productivity advice the way we think about those fad diets that pop up every January.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. If a specific workflow doesn't match your natural cognitive metabolism, meaning how your brain fundamentally processes information and stress, it is destined to fail.
Yeah, it's just not sustainable.
Exactly. You might stick with a rigid checklist for a week out of sheer willpower, but eventually your natural metabolism takes over. You get miserable and you bounce right back to your default state.
That metabolism analogy is the perfect lens for this, actually, because Felix Römer's article leans heavily on the foundational work of Carson Tate, who essentially decoded this cognitive metabolism into distinct styles.
Right, the 4 core styles.
Yes, but rather than just listing them out, let's look at the friction between them, because that's where it gets real. Imagine putting 2 very different metabolisms in the same room. On one side, you have the prioritizer.
Oh, I know these types.
Right. This person is driven by the dopamine hit of completion. They are fiercely logical, super goal-focused, and obsessed with fast execution.
They don't want the long backstory.
Exactly. They just want the destination and the straightest, most aggressive line to reach it.
And then, on the complete opposite end of that spectrum, you'd have the people who view work not as a series of isolated targets, but as a web of relationships.
Yes, exactly. That is the arranger. Their metabolism is entirely different.
They're the team players.
Right. Arrangers process productivity as a social mechanism. They are collaborative, they're supportive, and they intuitively understand that long-term execution requires team alignment. They aren't looking for the shortest path. They are looking for the most cohesive path.
Which is super valuable, but definitely clashes with a prioritizer.
Oh, absolutely. And then we have another classic point of tension, which is the planner versus the visualizer.
Okay, I have to imagine the planner is the slow-carb, steady-release metabolism, the person who needs everything mapped out before taking a single step.
You hit the nail on the head. Planners are highly sequential. They process work by breaking it down into detailed chronological timelines.
Very step-by-step.
Yeah. They find comfort in the structure of the tracks, ensuring every single tie is bolted down before the train leaves the station. But a visualizer's brain works more like a sugar rush of ideation.
Just bouncing everywhere.
Exactly. They are spatial, big-picture thinkers. They're constantly synthesizing these disparate pieces of information to see the final product long before a single task is even written down. They don't want to build the tracks. They want to design a totally new kind of flying train.
That's such a visual way to put it. But to survive in the current business landscape, we also have to account for environments where the tracks and the trains are constantly changing.
Which brings us to the 5th style. This one was identified by Dialpad, and it's heavily featured in Römer's breakdown. The adapter.
Chameleons.
Precisely. Their metabolism can shift. They move fluidly across these different approaches to accommodate projects that are heavy on ambiguity and sudden pivots.
Okay, let's unpack this because it is very easy to listen to those categories and think, well, I'm a visionary, like a visualizer, but I get things done like a prioritizer. Oh, sure, the ego bias.
Exactly. We all suffer from a bit of that ego bias. So if we want to actually fix our workflow today, how does a listener reliably diagnose their true baseline style?
Well, Romer's article offers a brilliant 60-second diagnostic tool. You basically forget personality quizzes entirely.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. Instead, you just open up your calendar and your primary note-taking app right now. Look at the visual landscape of your brain dumps.
So just looking at the raw output.
Exactly. Are your notes heavy on structured timelines, numbered steps, and perfectly indented bullet points? If so, your underlying engine is a planner.
Makes sense.
But look at your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Is it packed with brief, constant check-ins? And are your notes mostly lists of people you need to follow up with? Then you are processing the world as an arranger.
So if I open my notebook right now, and it's basically a chaotic mind map full of half-finished sketches, arrows connecting random thoughts, and big underlined ideas with zero linear structure, I'm looking at the footprint of a visualizer. Without a doubt, that's a classic visualizer. And if your notes are just blunt, fragmented commands like fix budget, call vendor, launch campaign, with zero context or formatting, you are a prioritizer cutting straight to the outcome.
Just the raw action item.
Exactly. You can even see this in your sent folder. Prioritizers send one-sentence emails that occasionally come across as demanding.
I've definitely received a few of those.
We all have. And visualizers send long, winding paragraphs filled with ideas, but very few actual instructions. Your natural output strips away the ego bias and reveals exactly how you process work.
Knowing this baseline is powerful, but here is where we need to elevate the conversation. Because identifying your style isn't about giving yourself permission to just lean into your comforts.
No, not at all.
It's really about building defense mechanisms. Because in a high-stakes business environment, your greatest cognitive strength is also your most dangerous blind spot.
We see this constantly in teams that fail to scale. Let's look at the underlying mechanisms of those blind spots, starting with the planners.
Okay, what's their trap?
Well, their superpower is punctual, reliable delivery. But the psychology behind that requires an immense amount of cognitive load to build their mental models. They build these beautiful, intricate houses of cards. So their blind spot is severe rigidity.
Ah, so when things change, they struggle.
Exactly. When a client suddenly pivots, a planner might freeze or become visibly defensive because the cognitive cost of rebuilding that timeline is just overwhelming.
So they need a way to protect the house of cards from collapsing when the wind blows.
Right. The guardrail for a planner is what the article calls scheduled spontaneity. You must build in a quick daily checkpoint, say 15 minutes every morning, dedicated solely to adjusting the timeline.
That's smart.
Yeah, you don't ask a planner to just go with the flow.
Yeah.
You build agility into their schedule.
Right.
So adjusting to chaos actually becomes part of the plan itself.
Okay, let's apply that logic to the prioritizers. If their whole metabolism runs on the dopamine hit of crossing things off, I have to assume their blind spot is just running themselves into a brick wall.
Oh, absolutely. Burnout is their biggest risk. They get tunnel vision chasing the completion high. But there is a secondary blind spot that really damages teams, and that's their communication.
Because they're too brief.
Yes. Because they strip away all the fluff to move faster, their messages are often so curt they leave colleagues confused or feeling unvalued. The necessary guardrail for a prioritizer is artificial friction.
Meaning what, exactly?
You set strict execution timers so they are forced to stop working, and mandate a personal rule to add one full sentence of context to every message before hitting send.
A forced pause to remember that other people require context. I love that. Now, what about our big picture visualizers? If they are operating at 30,000 feet, they must have zero object permanence for the tiny details.
They absolutely lack that object permanence. Visualizers are incredible at driving innovation sprints, but they get bored the second a project moves from ideation to execution.
The fun part is over for them.
Exactly. They are highly prone to task switching, which means they will design a brilliant marketing campaign and then completely forget to include the hyperlink in the launch email.
Oh, no.
Right?
Oh.
So their guardrail is implementing mandatory micro checkpoints before anything goes live. They need a rigid pre-flight checklist, or better yet, a designated partner to audit the details they naturally gloss over.
That makes perfect sense. That leaves our arrangers who treat work as a social web. The blind spot there seems pretty obvious to me. If your default solution to every problem is building consensus, you are going to waste a catastrophic amount of time.
That is exactly what happens. Arrangers use meetings as a security blanket. If there's a minor budget discrepancy, an arranger won't just fix the spreadsheet. They will schedule a 45-minute video call with 6 different stakeholders to discuss how everyone feels about the discrepancy.
Oh, that sounds exhausting for the rest of the team.
It really is. The guardrail here is enforcing strict structural limits. Arrangers need hard caps on how many hours they can spend in meetings per week, and a rule that absolutely no meeting can be scheduled without a concrete, outcome-driven agenda.
I want to push back on the fifth style, though, the adapters.
Okay, go for it.
The idea of a fluid chameleon sounds great on a resume, right? But in practice, doesn't that just lead to total unpredictability? I mean, if I'm working with an adapter and they are a hyper-focused prioritizer on Monday, but a consensus-seeking arranger on Wednesday, the resulting whiplash is going to paralyze the team.
That is a highly critical concern, and honestly, the source material addresses it head-on. True adaptability isn't about just blowing in the wind based on your mood. Adapters face the massive hidden tax of context switching.
Which leads to burnout, too, I imagine.
Exactly, and overcommitment, because they feel capable of handling every type of work. The solution to prevent that team whiplash is intentional documentation. You have to pick a primary label to start a baseline style your team can expect from you 80% of the time.
Okay. So you establish a recognizable baseline, and you actively signal when you are stepping out of it. Like, hey, team, I usually operate as a planner, but for this specific 2-week sprint, I am shifting into visualizer mode to brainstorm.
Yes, exactly the kind of clear handoff protocol they need. Adapters also must strictly limit concurrent tasks, so they aren't holding on to fragments of 20 different projects across 5 different cognitive styles.
Which transitions us perfectly into the technology side of this deep dive. Once we understand the underlying psychology of our workflows, we have to audit our screens.
Oh, the screens are the messy part.
Right. We are currently living in an era of massive tool clutter. Companies keep buying new software hoping it will fix productivity, but if we don't match the tech to the cognitive traits we just discussed, we are literally just adding friction.
What's fascinating here is how Römer actually maps specific software features to these personality styles. It's genuinely eye-opening. It proves why forcing an entire company onto one rigid platform usually sparks, like, a quiet rebellion.
It never works.
No. Let's look at planners. Since their brains process work as a timeline, they need their inbox to behave like one. They thrive on shared calendars in Google Workspace, where dependencies are highly visible.
They want to see the sequence.
Exactly. But more importantly, they benefit from tools like Drag or Yonido, which literally convert chaotic email threads into actionable, date-bound Kanban boards.
They are using software to lay down the tracks. Now, for the prioritizers, I assume any visual noise is a threat to their focus. They don't want complex dashboards.
Right. Prioritizers need software that removes friction. Their ideal stack includes execution timers to sort of gamify their speed, but the real secret weapon is aggressive inbox filtering.
So they never even see the junk.
Exactly. A prioritizer should almost never manually delete a low-value newsletter. Their Gmail or Outlook rules should automatically file away anything that isn't a top-tier priority, keeping their visual field entirely focused on high-value targets.
Contrast that with the visualizers, who probably feel suffocated by a linear Kanban board.
Oh, a Kanban board is a nightmare for them. Visualizers need spatial processing tools, dedicated digital whiteboards, mind mapping software, and highly visual, color-coded inbox labels.
They need to see the colors.
They do. They need to categorize information by color so themes surface instantly without them having to read through lines of text. Römer also emphasizes that visualizers should utilize software to run 20-minute sprints.
Just to keep things moving.
Yeah, those short bursts of variety keep their dopamine levels high enough to push through the detail-oriented work they usually hate.
And for the arrangers, the technology has to support the social web, obviously.
Exactly. Arrangers require team productivity tools that provide deep transparency into who is handling what. But their most critical tool isn't some complex app. It's a dedicated waiting for list.
A waiting for list.
Yeah, because they delegate and collaborate so widely, they need a centralized repository to track handoffs so favors and requests don't just fall through the cracks. They also benefit massively from software that replaces live meetings like async video updates or shared voice memos.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when this whole framework transitions from a personal life hack into a massive strategic advantage for businesses.
Right, at the team level.
When leadership understands these digital and cognitive mappings, you stop forcing teams to blindly copy an arbitrary workflow. The article highlights how you can distill this into a one-page project note.
Yeah, it's so practical.
You list owners, due dates, and essential information, but you also map out the processing styles required for the project phases. This allows managers to staff initiatives by fit rather than just scrolling a calendar to see who has a free hour on Tuesday.
Bringing cognitive diversity into project management changes everything. You intentionally put a planner on logistics and a visualizer on strategy, giving them the specific software they need to thrive.
Which sounds like a dream.
It does. But of course, that leads us to the most volatile part of modern work, which is the hybrid team collision.
We've all been there. It is incredibly easy to be productive when you are alone in your home office, perfectly aligned with your color-coded inbox. But the illusion breaks the exact moment you put a blunt, fast-moving prioritizer and a big-picture, rambling visualizer into the same Zoom room.
Oh, it creates instant friction. The prioritizer is sitting there tapping their foot waiting for a binary decision, while the visualizer is trying to sketch out a 5-year philosophical roadmap.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It really is. And this is exactly why redesigning mixed-mind meetings is critical. A hybrid meeting has to cater to vastly different processing speeds, and Römer provides a masterclass structure for this. You must redesign the agenda to lead with decisions.
So you completely invert the traditional meeting structure. Instead of warming up with context, you put the hardest, most actionable items right at minute one.
Exactly. By placing decision-heavy items at the very beginning, you immediately satisfy the outcome-driven prioritizers and planners. They get the concrete action they crave, which keeps them engaged.
And once that's done,
then, once the decisions are locked in, you transition the second half of the meeting into big-picture alignment and open discussion.
and that second half serves the visualizers and the arrangers. They get the expansive context and the social connection they need to understand why the decisions matter, so they leave motivated rather than feeling dictated to.
It creates a perfectly balanced ecosystem. But to maintain it, you must establish clear communication norms. Teams have to openly accept that prioritizers are going to speak bluntly, and know that it isn't a personal attack, it's just their metabolism.
Right.
Conversely, the prioritizers need to exercise real patience when arrangers add relational context to a topic. Crucially, in a hybrid setup, this alignment requires publishing shared notes immediately.
Get it in writing.
Always. And perhaps the most vital advice in the entire piece. Ruthlessly replace routine status calls with asynchronous check-ins. You do not need 12 people on a live call just to confirm a project is 50% complete. Protect the deep work.
Treating a meeting agenda like a strategic roadmap completely shifts the team's focus. The article makes a brilliant point here. When you structure collaboration this way, you move the company's focus away from process-like, arguing over how we do things, and shift it entirely toward outcomes, what we are actually achieving.
And that shift is everything.
It really is. Driving outcomes is the ultimate key to staying ahead. So, we've covered the psychology, the software alignment, and the meeting redesign. But to make this actionable, how do we take this out of the conceptual realm and apply it today?
Well, Römer's text closes with a highly practical challenge, which he calls the 30-day experiment.
Okay, how does that work?
It starts by picking just one primary working approach today. Don't try to be everything. Then schedule a single micro-experiment this week. Set up a new automated inbox filter, or commit to working in 20-minute sprints for one afternoon.
Just a small step.
Exactly. But the critical mechanism is how you track it. For the next 30 days, you don't track your output. You track your energy using 2 daily questions. 1, which tasks drained you? And 2, which ideas energized you?
Wow, tracking energy instead of time is a profound shift. We are so obsessed with logging hours that we ignore the actual cognitive cost of the work.
Because time is finite, but energy is what actually dictates quality. After 30 days of answering those 2 questions, you will have hard data showing whether the tools and the rules you adopted actually supported your natural metabolism.
And if they didn't?
If they drained you, you discard them without guilt and try a different style. It replaces the shame of failing a generic productivity system with objective data about your own brain.
So what does this all mean for the future of how we work together? If our productivity styles dictate our ideal software, expose our natural blind spots, and require completely redesigned meetings, it genuinely forces us to rethink the entire hiring process.
It really does.
If a company truly embraces this framework, future hiring might become much less about, checking off a list of technical resume skills and entirely focused on finding the perfect software and style compatibility for a team.
Imagine that.
I mean, imagine interviewing for a role, and instead of asking where you went to college, the hiring manager asks how you naturally structure your inbox, specifically because they need a visualizer to balance out a department drowning in rigid planners. It would fundamentally change how we build businesses.
It shifts management from the archaic practice of overseeing time to the highly strategic practice of managing cognitive energy. And as the source material makes perfectly clear, that is an infinitely more sustainable way to run a modern organization.
It really is the end of the factory mindset. Just like we have to figure out the foods that fuel our physical metabolism, we have an obligation to discover our workflow's metabolism. Thank you for tuning in to the Smart Keys podcast. We highly encourage you to subscribe so you never miss an insight that can give you an edge. And please take the time to read Felix Römer's full article to really dig into the granular tactics we discussed today. You can find the link directly in our show notes. Until next time, stop forcing yourself into the wrong box and go build the workflow that actually works for you.